And with this question in mind, the thought that ceasing to do meaningless or frivolous things, repetitive things that don't seem to have changing or lasting outcomes, especially for happiness, to stop doing these meaningless things might be the only meaningful thing that a person can do. And this idea points toward a more substantial way of life. Some monks observe that Buddhists generally don't find a meaning in things like material possessions and leisure activities or daily routines. So what we have instead is we live in the world of relative truth and subjective truth. We don't know what the truth is. We know what agrees with what is reality and what is true. So we assign meaning and create meaning to things or for things. And we say certain things are meaningful to me because of this, but maybe it means something else for you, or doesn't mean anything for you. But as you become more reflective, your perspective shifts because you realize, for instance, you only felt that certain things were meaningful because you were so absorbed in these activities and hobbies and projects. So for a while, you weren't facing this basic existential problem of, where is this going ultimately, and what is the purpose? Does it lead to everlasting happiness, which is basically what we all want? And we're trying to find this everlasting happiness by perpetuating it in activities, but that's not the way. So you weren't thinking about where it all leads to, how empty it might seem afterwards. Because activities, they just help us forget ourselves for a while and our problems. But the contemplative or meditative person, these practices sharpens your awareness of your situation. You realize that what you were doing was just a distraction. And this is the moral of the myth of Sisyphus. In the book by Albert Camus, Sisyphus has to roll a boulder up a mountain. This is a Greek mythology. But right before he reaches the peak, it always slips and rolls back down, and he has to start all over, forever. So this illustrates the view of many 20th century philosophers, especially materialist annihilationists. They believe that whatever humans do is absurd because it can never be truly accomplished. It doesn't go anywhere. You roll the rock, even though you'll never reach the top. And of course, we do achieve things. We get the jobs and the positions, the raises, and the careers and the fame. But this is what that job feels like once the illusion breaks. You realize that the position, the status, the fame, or the material things, it doesn't ultimately go anywhere, because one day you will retire and your colleagues will die, you will die. Yeah, you enjoy your retirement and your traveling and stuff, but that will end too. It'll all turn to dust, and then a group of strangers will take over whatever position you were in before, and they'll have a similar ending to it. It has no ultimate meaning, and eventually all of it is forgotten. So if you're prudent like this, if you're aware of that, and you cannot shake that awareness, then you're in touch with reality, fundamental reality, because most people just try to forget about it. Actually, most people don't care. We're happy just rolling the wheel, right? Just running through this wheel, rather, of existence, this perpetual motion that we perpetuate, pursuing desires, accomplishing and getting things. Other people try to escape this idea that life is kind of meaningless like that, and so we drink, or we escape in our hobbies. But sometimes for those people, that reality just keeps catching up, and some people fall apart with this. So the Buddha solved this at a very high level, at its in a complete sense. He didn't avoid this starkness or horror that sometimes dawns upon us. There is a lot of motivational talk out there, tons of it, and people are giving you pep talks, either these and entrepreneurs and some religious people in some traditions too. They also have these kinds of motivational talks telling you to shape up and do your best and be an honorable person, but this doesn't help. Especially with Tony Robbins conferences. They're great for manifesting things, but this doesn't help the person who sees the absurdity in existence itself, because to that person, the achieve anything you can people just haven't been hit by the truth yet. Or they don't care that life basically is meaningless, and the only meaning that we tend to subjectively assign is that what we realize is that it is up to us. We can place the meaning, but it's not intrinsically meaningful. So they are not seeing that reality. They are part of that absurd dance of existence. Perpetual motion and perpetual suffering, right? It's one of the Four Noble Truths. And this, of course, suffering is very deep in Buddhism, because it's not just suffering in this life or even your next human life, but we're talking many lives, hundreds and thousands of lives of evolution that are entering different levels of different kingdoms of nature. You have to go through. This gets very serious, because then there are polar regions. There are 6 realms. It's not just the physical, human realm that exists. There are 6 realms that you're circling through very slowly through eternities. There's unimaginable suffering on one side of that wheel, and there is unimaginable ecstasy on another. And neither of those polarities actually lead you anywhere or give you lasting happiness. Not even heaven, right? Not even the first few levels of Nibbana, the God or the demigod realm or the God realm, still within existence, which is cyclic. So these motivational people are asking others to be healthy and positive and involved in what is really nonsense. William James explored this in varieties of religious experience, and he was one of the first truly modern men, alongside Nietzsche and Dostoevsky and Sartre. He was brilliant and had to wrestle with these thoughts in a society that didn't really talk about them much. He proposed a workaround called pragmatism, and that solution isn't whether something is absolutely true, but whether it works. It's a utilitarian approach. So in this case, truth is found in the practical experience of how it allows you to live, rather than in theory or some ultimate reality. So maybe theoretically things might seem to be off or mathematically, but it seems to just work for us. So what is meaningful, though, at the end of all this, and beyond the intellectualism and beyond the philosophy, asking in terms of absolute truth? So for the Buddha, nirvana is the meaning of life. It is the final goal. Nirvana, or nibbana in Pali terms, the Theravada tradition, it's not in life that you find, or it's not in living that you find everlasting happiness or the meaning of life. Rather, I should say it's not in existence, ordinary existence. So it's not in this kind of ordinary life, but it is, however, this meaning and purpose, it is found within your life. Whether it's in this one or the next, and because there's nothing to be experienced in death. Like theoretically, it's not possible to experience death from the annihilationist point of view. We covered this already. Because through annihilationism, everything is annihilated, including your perception, your existence. You don't experience it, it just disappears. Your whole life disappears. So this is where you see the split between analytical philosophy and existential philosophy. The analytical types play with logic and symbols and math. The existentialists like Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir ignored the math games and faced the situation directly. And these thinkers would start their day with a cognac and a cigarette instead of all these mathematics and things. They were brilliant enough to do the logic. They just chose to focus on the experience of being instead. Even the analytical school eventually realizes that it's a logical contradiction to talk about experiencing your own death from the annihilationist or annihilationalist point of view. You can't be both completely dead and there to experience your death and the relief of the suffering. No. From that point of view, that's theoretically impossible. But however, from the Buddhist point of view, when you die, it's not real death in the sense of complete non-existence. Death certainly is an experience because the consciousness continues. So that works theoretically. This is how it actually works too, is that you can experience death because in reality, it's just your body that dies and your consciousness persists. But this is all human activity. I mean, this human activity, besides the pursuit of nirvana, this means that, so we know this at this point of the lecture, is that, all human activity, the ordinary sensual life is meaningless. We don't know the meaning of life. It seems meaningless, or we try to create meaning ourselves because there doesn't seem to be an intrinsic meaning of this impermanent cyclic kind of existence that we have. So it is, according to Buddhists as well, if it goes nowhere, it's meaningless. Everything you love and find pleasing, and all the people you know and love, all your things, will change and be separated from you. Every possession, every person, friend, relationship, every accumulation must be lost. Therefore, these things cannot be the goal or the purpose. There can be no goal in a transient universe. It is all ultimately absurd. So David Suzuki, he was a Zen philosopher, in fact. He wasn't just a biologist. And he once asked about the European absurdists. He said they see the void, but they don't jump in. And people like Sartre apprehended the void through intellect rather than authentic freedom, though. So in Japan, you sometimes see paintings of a monk walking in empty space, looking very happy and serene. And that is what we are actually doing. Not at his level, though. We are rocketing around the sun on a spinning rock or spinning globe. We aren't going anywhere. And does this mean that every part of life is absurd? Ultimately, yes. It has no final goal. And all of our chosen goals are pretend. They're false victories. We decide to hike to a ridge just to have something to do for the afternoon. We tend to shoot for the very best to the top of it. And we get there, but then once we climb that peak, we see that there's another mountain just behind it. So we have to do it again. Go for a bigger one this time. Why not? These are randomly chosen exercises. We go to the North Pole, we explore it, we come back. Then what? We think, now what? Then we go to the moon, because we've already explored everything on Earth. Or we're just bored. That sounds like a good idea. And then once we do that, maybe we can do Mars. And it is all just a way to avoid a terrible existential dread. As long as we have a project like this, we can forget the meaninglessness. But when the project ends, there is nothing. And it's the same idea like when you just, as soon as you stop doing something and thinking and you're sitting there in an empty room, that anxiety sets in, and the boredom and the unsatisfactoriness and the restlessness. So, you would think, can't we just take life as it is without trying to outsmart nature? Well, you're walking in a circle because that's the shape of the universe. There are no other lines to walk. And the thing is, if you stepped out, where would you go? Right? If the universe is essentially a circle as well, it's cyclic. If you could step out of existence, where would you go? And that end goal must be something like nirvana, because nirvana is a state of everlasting happiness. It is a place, that end goal must be something like nirvana, the final nirvana, or moksha, which is the outside of the wheel of samsara. Because it's a place where there is no existence in the ordinary sense. It's a place that lasts forever, and there is eternal, everlasting happiness. The Buddha couldn't easily describe it because it's beyond words and ordinary experience. It is in a dimension that is higher than the intellect, so we can't grasp it very easily intellectually. It's higher than language. We can't speak of it easily. But it, as I said before, it does happen during life, just not in the mundane sense. It happens when you're alive if you can realize it, and realizing requires that you awaken. And that awakening starts with the first comprehension of realizing that ordinary life is frivolous. And then from there, you find the means to getting into raising your awareness, which is meditation, the Eightfold Path, and mindfulness and all that. Eventually, you find a way to put an end to this relentless cycle of suffering, because that's ultimately what it is. It's not just absurdity of going around to the motions of meaningless, frivolous activities. It has a tremendous, unspeakable suffering as well. And all that suffering is inevitable. So it is absurd. So this end of nirvana is something you can experience in your own life. It's psychological. It's a vibration that you can access. Your mind slips into when it's not conditioned. It's a state of consciousness. It's eternal, so it doesn't rely on time. You don't have to wait until after death to experience it. You can train towards it right now, work towards it, and live there psychologically. How long it takes is a matter of effort and will and all that, the Eightfold Path, and the 7 factors of awakening. But once you get there, it just happens as long as you have a conscience to get there. As long as you have the conscience still, you're not consumed in the ego, you can get there. And then when they say in the suttas, when your body breaks up upon death, it's just the body, and your existence continues, and it goes wherever it belongs, according to its karma. And since you've been training for nirvana or nibbana, that is where you will go. If you've attained it in this life. It can take a few lifetimes. And this is the final nibbana I'm referring to, because there are levels of heaven, levels of nirvana, some with form, some are formless. There are many levels. So you want to be, if we're talking about the ultimate meaning of life, the intrinsic happiness and reality, experiencing reality, you have to step out of the ordinary wheel of perpetual motion, the ordinary wheel of life of perpetual existence. If you step out of existence, you will be in the reality, which has the substantiality we're looking for. And it's not annihilationism. It's not the complete cessation of everything. There is consciousness here still, right? This is the great reality. It's the primordial field consciousness of the universe. And when you return there, you're returning to a perfectly content, simple, and blissful state. And this state is called the shunyata, the emptiness.